Hi YouTube, this is Shell with Shelby's Knickknacks here to bring you another crochet tutorial. In today's tutorial, I'll be showing you how to do a proper gauge for any size crochet hook. So just in case, basically, if you're trying to do a project and you're not sure about the size yarn that you're using, especially when you're using size 4 worsted weight yarn, they can vary. So basically you can have, even though it says size 4, basically it could be a little thinner, some could be a little thicker, some could be a little tougher, some could be softer. So in this video, I'll be showing you how to do a proper gauge swatch for whatever yarn you're using so that you can make sure you get the right measurements for your project. Also, if you would like to see more from me, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I will also put a link down in the description box below to my Etsy shop. So stay tuned. Let's start with the materials. You'll need any size yarn that you're using, because again, we're learning how to do a gauge for whatever project that you're doing. But in this video, I'm using a size 4 worsted weight. It is Red Heart Super Saver in the color brown. You'll need scissors, a size hook of your choice, because once again, we're doing this to the gauge, or excuse me, the size that you would need for your hook. But I'll be using a size H or 5mm crochet hook, and you will also need something to measure with. A measuring tape or ruler will be fine. Okay, this is an example of a swatch that I made, and in this video I'll be showing you how to do a swatch for single crochet. And I will also have other videos on double crochet and half double crochet, but for the first one we'll be doing a gauge swatch on single crochet. So basically this is an example. I've done it in a 4x4 gauge, meaning that it is 4 inches by approximately, hopefully you can see this, 4 inches. Okay, and I'll show you from start to finish how to do this. Okay, so first we're going to start with our slip knot. Let me do that again. Okay, and for this particular one, I'm going to set my tape measure up because again, I'm doing a 4x4 gauge for this 5mm crochet hook. And if you need a 5x5 gauge, I'll show you how to do that. We'll just chain however many you need. But for this particular tutorial, I'll be doing a 4x4 gauge. So I have my measuring tape there, and I'll put that out of the way so we don't get distracted. And I've already made my slip knot, and so I'm going to chain. So yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and that was 3. So I'm going to chain up, I believe, 17 stitches, or excuse me, 17 chains, and I'll meet you back when we have 17 chains. Okay, I have my 17 chains, and I'm going to grab my measuring tape, and we're going to check to make sure that this starting chain is approximately 4 inches. And as you can see, it is. Okay, so we'll put that out of the way. And so since we chained up 17, we're only going to end up with 16 single crochet, because this chain that is closest to the hook, not the one that's on the hook, but the one that's right beneath it, that chain there, that 17th chain, is not a stitch. So we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through. We should have 2 on that hook, yarn over, pull through 2. That is our first single crochet. So now we're going to go into that second chain, which is here. So we insert, yarn over, pull up, you should have 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And we're going to keep repeating that, inserting, yarning over, pulling up 2, yarn over, pulling through those 2 loops until we get all the way down to the end of this chain. And again, you should have 16 single crochet at the end of this row. Since that 17th chain is essentially like a chain 1 turning stitch, that does not count as a stitch. And I'll do this first row with you so that you're able to better follow along with me, especially if this is your first time, because I'm trying to make these videos as beginner friendly as possible. And we're just going through each chain. We insert, yarn over, pull up, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, or excuse me, the only 2 loops for that single crochet. And we just keep going down that chain until we get to the very last chain. Okay, almost to the end. Very last chain, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through those loops. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to chain one, and again, any chain one does not count as a stitch. And now we're going to single crochet across row 2 all the way across, being sure that we have 16 stitches. So I'm going to do row 2 with you. So we're going to insert, because again, that chain one does not count. So we're going to insert into that first stitch space. Single crochet, that's 1, 2, and making sure that we get under both of those V's. 3, need some more yarn, sorry about that. Insert, being sure that we get under both of those loops. Okay, and just continue down row 2 until you get down to your very last stitch, and I'll meet you. Okay, I'm at my very last stitch on row 2, and this one is usually always hard to see, but this is our 16th stitch that we need to get into in order to keep this gauge swatch in order. Let's see, so I'm going to insert in there and do that last single crochet, and I'm going to chain 1, turn my work. And so now for row 3, we're going to do the exact same thing, because again, we are trying to get our gauge for single crochet stitches with whatever size hook that you are using. So again, I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did on row 2. I'm going to single crochet my way across row 3 until I get to that very last stitch, and we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. So as soon as you are done with row 3, I will meet you at the end in order to catch that last stitch, just to make sure that we don't miss it. And I will see you at the end of row 3 so that we can begin the next row. Okay, I'm on my last stitch on row 3. And again, sometimes it's difficult to see, but we make sure that we get under those 2 V's, or those 2 pieces of yarn there that make that V shape, in order to get that 16th stitch. And now we chain 1 and we turn. So basically at this point, it's extremely repetitive. So I'm going to measure now, and those 3 stitches for me equal about 1 inch. And again, this could be depending on your yarn tension, meaning how tightly or loosely you crochet. So just be aware of your tension. Keep measuring along the way until you get to the desired gauge. And again, my desired gauge is 4 inches in width and 4 inches in length to make a perfect square. So I'll meet you back once yours measures out to 4 inches, and I will let you know how many rows I did in order to get my 4x4. Okay, I'm on my very last single crochet here for this row, and I've already pre-measured out, so I know that this is my very last single crochet for this project. And I've already cut my yarn, so I've done my last single crochet. Now I'm going to chain 1, and usually this is where you would cut your yarn, so I've already cut mine, and I pulled through in order to seal off my work. Okay, now let's do this measurement just to make sure. So for me and the way that I crochet as far as my tension, I feel that mine is fairly medium. It's not too tight, not too loose. It's somewhere in between. So I'm 4 inches wide by approximately 4 inches tall. So basically, as you can see, it took me 15 rows of single crochets on each and every row, and starting out with that chain of 17, single crocheting on the way back, which means that I have 16 stitches on each and every row. And that's how I got this 4x4 gauge swatch. So I know that if I was doing a project, it would take me essentially 15 rows of single crochet with my 5mm crochet hook in order to get the, I guess you would call this the length, because if I was doing like a blanket, I would know that I would need to do 15 rows in order to get 4 inches. And as far as the width, I know that I would need to do essentially have 16 stitches in order to achieve a width of 4 inches. So again, if you're doing simple math and you're multiplying, let's say for instance, you needed to do something that were 20 inches long, you would need to essentially multiply the 16 stitches, or divide the 20 by 4. We would need to take that 20 inches, divide that by the gauge swatch, which is 4 inches. So 20 divided by 4 is 5. So we will need to take that 5 that we got, and since we know we need 16 inches in order to achieve that 4 inches for that gauge as far as the width goes, we would take 16, multiply it by 5, and that equals 80. So you would know that you would need, essentially, in order to achieve this gauge, you would need 80 stitches going across in order to achieve your 20 inches that you would need, for example, if you were doing a project with the width of 20 inches. And it would also essentially be the same thing for your length. You know you would need 15 rows in order to achieve your 4 inches. So you would essentially multiply the 15 times, for example, if we were still doing those same 20 inches, we would know that again, we would do 20 divided by 4, that equals 5. And then we would do 15, multiply it by 5, multiply that by 5, and you would get 75 rows. So again, if you're doing a project that is 20 inches by 20 inches, it would be 80 single crochets this way, and you would need 75 rows in order to achieve that 20 inch by 20 inch project. And again, that's just an example on how to do essentially the math whenever you need to do a certain gauge and you're unaware of how to do that. This is the simplest way that you can start knowing that you'll be doing a single crochet stitch with whatever hook that you have. So again, yours may have turned out a little differently because again, we all crochet differently with different tensions, but hopefully this video helps you to better understand how to do a gauge with a certain stitch, in this case, single crochet, in order to help you achieve the length and the width that you need for your particular project. Well, this completes today's tutorial. Hopefully you were able to easily follow along and that you were able to get the set gauge that you needed for your particular size yarn and your particular size hook, along with the tension. So again, it doesn't matter what tension, whether it be loose, medium, or tight, or somewhere in between all of those, you will now be able to have the tools that you need in order to complete a project in the future that essentially needs a little bit of math and just a little bit of tweaking. As long as you can do a simple gauge, you could even do one 2 by 2 inches, 1 by 1. I just chose to do 4 by 4 just so that you were able to essentially work out some of the kinks, because just because you're thinking, oh, it took me 3 rows to do an inch, that must be it. Sometimes that's not exactly the case. So it is best to do more than 1 inch by a 1 inch gauge when you're trying to figure out whatever gauge, or excuse me, whatever size that you're using. So I do suggest that in the future you test this out, because again, just because it says size 4, all yarn is not created equal. So gauges are going to be your best friend in the future when it comes to any project, especially when you're a beginner and you're trying to use different yarns. Maybe you found some on sale, and that's perfectly fine. But again, I would suggest doing a small gauge for each and every yarn that you use, especially if you're doing a project with multiple colors. And that way you'll be able to better understand how many rows will it take me to get the same gauge, so that your project will come out even or uneven, however you would like it. I just hope this video does help those of you out there that are beginners and that may be a little intimidated to start a project because you don't fully understand how to do a proper gauge. So today we did single crochet, and I will also have 2 other videos on how to do a gauge on half double crochet and a video to do a gauge on double crochet. So just stay tuned for this and more videos like it. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you all next time.